This episode of Policing Matters is brought to you by Lexipol, the experts in policy, training, wellness support, and grants assistance for first responders and government leaders. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's Lexipol.com. Hey, welcome to Lexipol's First Responder Wellness Week, where you will see and hear an entire week of content dedicated to fitness and physical and mental health wellness just for first responders. A law enforcement officer is expected to work with their brains, but the reality is you need to use brawn, strength, and endurance as well. My guest today is Dru Mejico, a 36-year-old law enforcement officer with 13 years of service with the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Dru is a husband and a father of 2 daughters. And with over a decade of experience as a strength and conditioning coach and nutrition coach, he's worked with everyone from the general population to professional athletes. Well, Dru, you're listening to Policing Matters on police1.com. Thanks for checking in. And of course, you know me, I'm your host, Jim Dudley. Be sure and check us out on our YouTube or our audio podcast only. Well, as the founder of 911 Strong, Dru created the Fit for Duty Academy, and he's helped over 1,000 officers, recruits, and first responders lose fat, build muscle, and improve their on-duty performance. He's now in his 8th year of business. His mission is to make sure that first responders are fit, strong, and ready for anything so that they can make it home safe. Well, those are great goals. Welcome to Policing Matters, Dru Mejico.
Jim, thanks for having me, man. I'm honored to be here. I love what you guys are doing with the podcast and just spreading the word. And I can't wait to just give as much value as I can to your listeners.
Yeah, well, I'm following you on the Instagram page. You started out as a regular guy who embraced fitness, and then you worked up, and now you are a class athlete. You first started training, and how did it happen? What was your motivation? Tell us about your journey.
Definitely. So, like you said, I was just a regular guy. I actually grew up super insecure kid, skinny arms, skinny legs, did not have great genetics, had a lot of belly fat, and I never wanted to take my shirt off. I was always like super insecure about that. And it was weird because I was always an athletic kid. I always grew up playing sports, very athletic, very, very competitive, but I never looked like it. And that was something that always bothered me growing up. It wasn't until I turned 18 that I really started getting serious about fitness and training. And my goal was to try to build as much muscle mass as possible. Like I said, I was always skinny, so being skinny or insecure, I was the youngest brother. I was always picked on, things like that. So I just wanted to build a lot of strength and a lot of muscle, and that's what I did all throughout my high school, all throughout my college career. And it wasn't until I went through the academy right after I graduated college, and then my training started shifting a little bit. Obviously, a lot more running, a lot more calisthenics, things like that. But then as soon as I graduated the academy, I went right back into like my bodybuilding era of trying to build a lot of muscle. Now, the second year on with my department, I started playing football with my department. It was called the OC Lawman, and it was essentially like a semi-pro league that played other law enforcement and fire agencies. So my goal was I wanted to become an athletic freak, right? So I reached out to one of my mentors. His name's Tony Sandoval, and at the time he was a strength and conditioning coach at the University of Colorado. So I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, I want you to turn me into an athletic freak. Like, please train me, coach me up." So he coached me for like 6 to 9 months with training, nutrition, and he trained me like an athlete. I was doing explosive movements that I wasn't doing since I was in high school. I was training strong. I was lifting. I was the most explosive, the most powerful, and the fastest that I ever was. So I was like, dang, like this makes me feel great. Like not only do I look like a quote unquote bodybuilder, but I'm actually performing like an athlete, right? And it slowly started my changing the love and my passion. So my goal was always to open up an athletic training gym. So at that point, I started getting all my certifications and everything like that. I started working at a speed and power performance center, training athletes anywhere from 8 years old all the way up to the pros. And I loved what I did. So my goal was to always open up a gym. And my business was founded actually on accident. So a lot of my coworkers would see the way that I was training, they'd see the results that I'm getting, and I was training some of the people for free, just my partners, just because I wanted them to stay fit. I wanted them to look good and feel good, right? And then slowly but surely, I just realized, man, there's really nothing out there that's training, cops and first responders to train like athletes. Everything is based towards running or calisthenics or CrossFit at the time was getting bigger. But I'm like, I know I have something so much better because I've trained athletes. I know exactly what to do and I know exactly the schedule, how we work, the mobility restrictions and everything like that. So I kind of it happened by accident. Like I said, my goal was to always open up a gym, and then 911 Strong happened, and this is my baby now.
Nice. Yeah, I know some of the other agencies are recognizing exactly what you say, and that is that a stronger officer, a more fit officer is less likely to be injured on the job, less likely to suffer some sort of illness that takes them off the street for long periods of time. So it may seem a little bit counterintuitive to put all this time and energy into building yourself up and making yourself fit, but in the long term, on or off duty, it's you're living your best life.
Yeah, no, 100%. I couldn't agree with that more. And that's something I stress to a lot of officers too, because they're like, sometimes I feel like it's when it comes to their family or their spouse, they're taking time away from the kids or they're taking the wife. But ultimately, in order to serve up best for them, you have to be the best version of yourself. And if you're not doing that, then it's going to be very difficult. Energy is going to suffer. You're not going to want to do anything. You're going to be lethargic all the time, and they're going to get the brunt of that. And that's what you don't want.
Yeah, and so sometimes, it can be a long day, a tough shift. Most cops, the balance between work life and off-duty life sometimes causes to just collapse at home at the end of the day. I know that was, for me, that was the story, right? Like I'd start out in the morning with great intentions of getting a workout in of some kind, and then I'd go about my day. And at the end of the day, I come home, I am just bushed. I am like ready to sit on the couch and turn on ESPN or something and just, veg till dinner time. But I want to ask some of your biggest challenges when you first started training. What was your motivation to say, okay, I'm gonna get training at a regular interval at the same time every day? Is that what happened, or did you wait for those opportunities?
Yeah, so great question. So when I first started, I was young. I was 22 years old. I didn't have kids. I didn't have I wasn't married at the time. So I did have a lot more time growing up, like when I first started, right? So I did have that to my advantage and I maximized that. I was training 5, 6 days a week and I would go hard because I didn't have any other real responsibilities other than, going to work and going to the gym. Now things have shifted, things have changed. I'm married, I have 2 kids, I'm running a full-time business, and things are the time I have is a lot different now, right? And this is the same things that a lot of people face now. Going on to the job, already having a family, things like that. Like you have to make sure that you maximize the time that you have. So what seems to work is that you need to work with something that works best for your schedule. You need to know what your work schedule is going to be for the week. I know things can change, whether it be overtime or court, things like that, but well, for the most part, we know what our schedule is going to be, and we need to communicate that with our spouse first and foremost. We need to know what our schedule is, communicate that, and say, okay, honey, your spouse, whoever, these are my work days. These are the times I would like to work out. Are you okay with that? Do you need help with the kids? Do you need help with like you have to be on the same page because if not, there's going to be a big clash. And a lot of people they don't even look at this part. It's just like, oh, I'm going to work out, and then the wife saying, oh, you're being selfish. You're not, and it's like this is what I need. I need to be fit for duty. You don't understand. Once you communicate things, it makes it so much easier. And what I found is that if you on your off days, if you those will be like your longer workouts, and on your work days, maybe you only have like one or two workouts during that week, and they're shorter workouts. Maybe they're only 15 to 30 minutes, but it's something, right? And if we can maximize that time, if we can maybe wake up earlier, before we go 10-8, and we get a quick workout in before, or maybe that be immediately after. I know for right now, I'm working out after my shift, and if I come home and I spend time with the family. I play with the kids. I'm going to be just like you just said. I'm going to sit on the couch. I'm not going to want to do anything. So what I would recommend if you're training after your shift is go immediately to the gym before you even go home. That way you don't have those other distractions. And then when you get home, you're fully focused on your family and your kids. And that way, everything, you got all the bases covered.
Yeah, so if it's a regular checkbox on your calendar that you do your work, you go to the gym, and then you get home, it's a routine, right? And I think, there's another, lateral benefit from that, and that is that whatever you dealt with at work, you've got time to decompress a little bit. You get to take a shower, so you're not going home in, your dirty uniform, or that transition between street and home, where you're going to have close contact with your spouse and your children. So I think that's a great idea. And I think the most important part of what you just said is that you make that connection and you communicate with your spouse to say, hey, listen, I want this to be the schedule that works for all of us, and iron it all out before you just start disappearing for 2 hours at a time,
Yeah.
and then, man, you got problems at home.
Absolutely, absolutely. And on top of that, too, I know a lot of people still do, their department is now allowing them to train on duty as well. So whether that be on their code or something, like maximize that time. I know so many people that will still not work out during that time. And it's like, man, you're totally screwing things up. Like maximize, even if it's only an hour, maximize that hour, get your workout in so you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, for sure. So what is the biggest mistake? So those are the benefits. Those are the sort of, you know, uh, foundation of having a plan to getting into the gym and working out. And yeah, we'll go into like the faulty workouts, right? Like every time I go into a gym, I do something different. I have like zero routine. The only thing constant is me getting on a Peloton for 30 or 45 minutes. And then I think, oh, I'm great now. But I know I need structure with the strengthening as well. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see cops are making when it comes to fitness like that, about not having a plan or not being consistent, or maybe working out the wrong, muscle categories from time to time?
Yeah, I love that. I love the first thing that you said is not having a plan, because that's honestly where so many people struggle is they don't have a plan. They just go in, they kind of wing it. They, oh, I'll do some arms today, or I'll do some chest today, and you're ultimately it's better than doing nothing, right? You're in there, you're trying to do something, but you're not going to see any real progress. And what that's going to do is lead to a lot of frustration on your end, and then you're going to say like, well, I'm not seeing any progress. Like, why am I even going? I'm wasting my time. So the first and foremost is not having a plan and just doing random stuff. Pulling a YouTube video here, pulling an Instagram reel here. Even my workouts, like people will say, "Oh, I'm doing your workouts." It's like, okay, well, you need a program too. You don't just need workouts, right? You don't want to just do a bunch of random stuff because you're not going to see any progress. Now, those that are actually following a program, a lot of them are just following the wrong type of program and training that's not going to get them the results or carry over to their job. Things like training like a bodybuilder. Like it's so everybody always wants to look like Arnold, right? He looks amazing, but Arnold's not going to be chasing somebody down the street and putting them in cuffs and fighting with somebody. And like you have to make sure you have all aspects, right? So training like a bodybuilder is not going to serve you, and on top of that, it's going to require you to train 5 to 6 days per week for over an hour. A lot of people don't have that time. So what's going to happen is that you're going to pick and choose what workouts that work that you like from that plan, and then you're going to neglect the time the other workouts. Like everyone's going to neglect their legs, but we're going to all do our chest and our arms, right? But we're going to neglect those are the struggles when it comes to training like a bodybuilder. Some people are training like CrossFit, and CrossFit has evolved a lot from when it first started many years ago. And I'm still not a huge fan of it. I like the fact that it involves, multiple different modalities and whatnot. But the fact that you're training technical lifts in a fatigue state, I think is very, very dangerous for a lot of people. Olympic lifts are great, but they require a lot of learning. And if you're not doing the proper learning, working through the proper progressions, and then you're doing those lifts in a fatigue state, eventually your shoulders going to get jacked up, your lower back, your knees, everything's going to continue to break down because you shouldn't be doing those movements in a fatigue state. Sometimes people don't like to even work out and they're just like, oh, I'm just going to go for a run because I'm a runner. Well, running is great, but you're going to lose a lot of muscle mass. You're going to lose a lot of strength. You're going to put a lot of stress on your joints, like your knees and your lower back, even your feet, things like that. So, um, just having the right training program that involves everything. You're doing your strength work, you're doing your power work, you're doing your muscle building work, and you're doing your conditioning. You want to have those components in your workout throughout the week. Otherwise, your results are going to suffer. And then the last thing along that is not prioritizing their mobility. Mobility is going to be a big thing when it comes to injury prevention. And when you're sitting in a patrol call all day, or with a guard station, wherever it is that you're working, maybe you're even standing all day. If the lack of mobility is going to lead to a lot of issues down the road.
Yeah, so walk us through. an idea that I have where you're working a long shift, maybe you even have a long commute. You don't really want to grab a workout right after work. You don't have time for the gym. What can we be doing on the job uh, for staying in shape? I mean, maybe asking for a foot patrol or maybe parking your radio car and getting out more on foot. What can we do? Isometrics. What can somebody do who's either stuck inside a station or maybe working corrections or some other static job where they don't really get an opportunity to move around so much? Anything we could do from a chair, from a standing position?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, depending on where you're working, obviously, first and foremost, we want to always be as active as possible. I always tell people motion is lotion. The more we can get out, the more we can move, our body's going to feel better, right? And it's also going to improve NEAT, which is called it's NEAT, which is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And the more we can improve, this is pretty much just activity levels that are non-included inside the gym. So if we can do that more throughout the day, our health is going to improve overall, and our it's going to ultimately help with body fat levels as well. So whether let's just say you're in a patrol car, stop, like you just said, park the car, get out, walk a little bit. I know it's weird to kind of stretch a little bit when you're, out in public, but you don't have to literally get on the floor and do movements. You can just, get some quad movements in, some stretching. If you have a resistance band, you can just take in your patrol car or, guard station, wherever you work, just do some band pull aparts and band dislocates, things like that to help mobilize the shoulders and get the upper back activated. Because if you're stuck in this position here where your shoulders are rounded forward all the time, we want to focus on opening those up so we don't have any shoulder issues. And the same thing with the lower body. If we can mobilize our hips, that's going to reduce any injuries with the lower back and the knees and things like that. So always make sure that you're maximizing that, as much movement as you can. And one thing that a lot of people don't is it's not really sexy to talk about, but it's breathing. Oftentimes, when I'm training someone inside the gym, I'll take like a resistance band and I'll tie it around their waist, like around the belly button region. And I'll teach them how to breathe through their diaphragm, meaning 360 degrees. They should get air in their sides, in their back, in the front, and they should expand that entire band because that's going to be the proper breathing to where we're not in this super like amped up position. So a lot of times we just breathe through our chest and it just causes us to like get into what's called the sympathetic state, which is our stress system, right? Now, we have two systems. We have our sympathetic state and we have our parasympathetic state. These are our different nervous systems. Our parasympathetic state is our rest and digest system. So if we can get into that state, that's going to be more beneficial for us all the time. Problem is with police work, you're always alert, right? You're always looking at someone, you're talking to someone, you're looking at their pockets, looking at their hands, who's behind them. You're always on alert. So you're always in that sympathetic state. So if you're doing that all day without learning how to shift into your parasympathetic state when you're not on those calls or whatever the case may be, you're just heightened, you're elevating your cortisol levels all the time. And when that's elevated all the time, it makes it very difficult to lose fat and build muscle all the time. So if we can learn how to breathe, a lot of times I'll teach clients, it's called box breathing. So it's like inhale for 4 seconds, hold that inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then hold that exhale for 4 seconds. And you do that multiple times throughout your shift. You're going to learn how to relax your body, shift into that parasympathetic state, and you're going to be a lot more healthy overall.
Yeah, sounds like a great exercise just before bed too.
Absolutely.
Hey, I want to ask you more about your program and how you tailor a program to individuals. But first, I'd like to take a moment and thank our sponsor. Lexipol empowers first responders and public servants to best meet the needs of their residents safely and responsibly. Serving more than 2 million public safety and government professionals in over 8,000 agencies and municipalities, Lexipol offers a range of solutions that includes policies, training, behavioral health resources, news and analysis, and grant assistance services for law enforcement, fire and rescue, EMS, local government, and other agencies dedicated to public safety. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's LEXIPOL.com. And we're back, and I'm speaking with Dru Mejico, deputy and fitness guru and the founder of 911 Strong. That's NINE, the number 11 Strong. And Dru, I want to ask you, if an officer is starting from scratch, what's the best minimum effective dose workout to build strength and embrace and endurance? So building strength and endurance, you just said that if we only do running, we might be getting our cardio, but we're also losing strength. And then if we're just doing strength exercises, maybe we're not doing enough for our cardio. What's a good sort of mid-level thing that you're not already an athlete? Say you're somebody like me, and you want to start out. What's something that they can do consistently that gets them in pretty good shape in a reasonable amount of time?
Yeah, I love this question. So, depending on where you're starting, right? People are going to be intermediate, advanced, and beginners. You're going to have, 30 pounds to lose. Some are going to have 70 pounds to lose. For the general amount of cops out there, total body splits are going to work great overall because you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck. You're going to be able to train multiple qualities in the minimal, in the least amount of times. That way, you can still maximize time with your family. So, the minimum effective dose would be 3 times per week. And how I would break this down, you ideally want them to be on non-consecutive days. So a lot of times people will say, "Hey, I work 3 12s. I'll work those 3 days, and then I'm not going to work out during my week." We don't really want to do that. We want to try to space them out to make sure that recovery is optimal, right?
Mm.
So if we can do something like just say for like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, something like that, that's going to give our body enough time to recover. Now, how I would structure those workouts to be able to train and perform like an athlete is there's going to be 3 different blocks within each workout. Block one is going to be your strength and your power block because you want to be primed with this. You want to have the energy. You want to be able to perform to build that strength and build that power. Now, so that could be something like like a bench press variation or a deadlift variation mixed with like a jump or a med ball throw, something like that. We're not going to do any Olympic lifts or anything like that because most people don't know how to do that. But everyone can throw a ball, everyone can jump, right? So those are qualities that can still improve our power. So that's going to be block one. Now, block two is going to be our muscle building phase. And this is where I like escalate. It's called escalating density training, EDT. And this is I would do an upper body lift, a lower body lift, and a core lift. And I would rotate between those three exercises for a certain period of time. This could be anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes. And what you're doing is you're just rotating between those three exercises. This is going to build strength. This is going to build conditioning, and it's going to build muscle all in one block. So it's a great bang for your buck. And then I'd finish off the workout with block number three, which would be specifically tailored towards conditioning. So block one would be strength and power, block two would be muscle building, and block three would be conditioning. And that would be some type of like, it could be like a circuit fashion, it could be interval style, it could be, like you said earlier, hopping on a Peloton and doing some intervals on a Peloton, things like that. It could be weak link training, but typically that's how I would do something for someone who only has 3 days a week to train to get all qualities in throughout the week.
Yeah, weak link training. That sounds like what I'm doing already. Weak link training. So okay, so you've got a plan. You get into the gym. You try to space it out every other day. Um, what else are we talking about as far as nutrition that again, on the job, working nights, maybe you don't have a lot of options for places that are open to get something to chow down on. I'm sure you are a guy to say, bring your own lunch. What's that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Bringing your own lunch is always going to eliminate so many different factors, right? You're going to know exactly what you're putting into your body. You're not going to be forced to eat this fast food options. Not to say you're never going to eat it, right? I know the job. I understand sometimes you're going to have to go through a drive-through. You're going to have to get some gas station food. But if we can eliminate that by being prepared and packing your stuff, ultimately that's going to be better. Depending on, I've worked with people that are just on the call nonstop, and then I work with people that are not not as busy, right? So depending on what your work schedule looks like, you may be able to take two lunches to work, or maybe that's just one lunch on like a protein drink or something like that. But you can always take that, right? And depending on, if you're always on the road, if you don't have a microwave available, your food's obviously got to be eaten cold and things like that. Now, eventually, people start to get tired of just having, cold food or sandwiches or things like that, right? And I get that. And that's where learning how to track your own food and learning how to like track your macros comes into play because now you can go to, let's just say, healthier options like a teriyaki bowl, like a Waba grill or flame broil or things like that, and still get a nice healthy bowl that has, protein, carbs, and vegetables. And you know exactly how much you're eating still you're still going to be able to get the goals that you want without just going to McDonald's and getting a Big Mac supersize.
Yeah, and so some of us need that jolt of energy. I know when I get up in the morning, I gotta have a cup of coffee or two. And I teach at a university, so a lot of students I'll see at 9 o'clock in the morning drinking a Coke or an energy drink or something
Yes,
like that because they
all the
don't like
time.
coffee, but they got to have the caffeine. what's your take on those? And I mean, I'm talking about a regular day, regular meaning you get up in the morning, but some of us are, going to work in the middle of the day and they're going home in the middle of the night, or they're waking up at 4 p.m. to get ready for their shift. What's something that can keep our sugar levels, stable, not go too high or too low? What's your take on drinks and caffeine?
Yeah, so definitely it's something that we definitely have to minimize. Obviously, it's not something we're going to eliminate all the time. I still drink caffeinated drinks all the time. I drink coffee every day. Um, the goal is you never want to drink any caffeine or coffee or anything like that on an empty stomach. You always want to make sure you have something in your system first.
Mm,
And then if you're working nights, you never want to have caffeine after like 1 or 2 a.m. because that's going to disrupt your sleep when you get off at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., whatever time that is. And I know that's difficult when you're working nights because you got to stay up, you got to stay alert. So at 4 o'clock, 4 a.m. comes around and you're dead tired, you want a cup of coffee. And sometimes you're gonna have to do that. And I understand that. But in a perfect world, you want to eliminate the coffee anywhere between like 1 or 2 a.m. if you're working night shift. And then if you're working like day shift, anywhere between like 2 p.m., 3 p.m. is kind of like that cutoff for me. So that way it doesn't
mhm.
disrupt your sleep at nighttime. But ultimately, if your nutrition is dialed in and you're eating the right amount of foods that aren't like keeping you all sluggish and having these huge meals that just kind of put you in a food coma after that, ultimately you should feel a lot better and energized throughout the day. Sometimes I don't even need caffeine throughout the day at all because I feel good with what I'm doing. Nutrition is good, everything is dialed in, and then of course you're gonna have those days where I at least every day I'll have 1 cup of coffee. That's guaranteed for sure. But based on how the day goes and how nutrition's going, things like that, that will determine whether I have that second cup or not.
Yeah. So, okay, so you touched on food, talked about taking your meals with you to work if you can. And if you can't, there's a couple of exceptions there. But what about this latest fad of intermittent fasting? My brother-in-law is telling me, oh, I'm fasting. I'm like, oh, really? How much are you fasting? I'm like, fasting 12 hours a day. I said, really? You're going a whole day without eating? He goes, well, no, I go to bed at like 8 p.m. and I don't have my first meal till 8 a.m. I'm like,
Mhm.
that's called sleep, my friend. But
Yeah, called normal.
but now, I guess, there's all these scales that we're seeing on social media about if you're this, you should fast this amount. Is there anything to that?
Yeah, so intermittent fasting, and this goes with all the fad diets, right? Whether that be carnivore, keto, intermittent fasting, paleo, all those things like that. All of those diets work. They work because they put you in a calorie restriction. That's the only reason that's the biggest reason that they work is because they reduce the overall amount of calories that you're eating. So if I tell you, hey Jim, you're gonna start this diet and you're not gonna eat any more carbs. Well, you've just eliminated an entire food group. That's gonna help you lose fat. So it's not just the elimination of carbs that made you lose fat, it's the fact that you're not eating those 1,000 calories that were from those carbs you were eating on a daily basis. And same thing with intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting works because it eliminates your eating window. So if you're only eating for 8 hours of that day, you're typically going to eat less food than you will if you're in than then if you're eating all day. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, there are benefits to it, but however, if you're like this super like high strung, anxiety, stress driven person, intermittent fasting is not going to be a good fit for you because that's just going to amplify that. So if I can get someone to say, hey, I can get you to eat the foods that you like, the foods you enjoy, and I can have you eating all day without restricting your carbs, and you're still going to look great and feel great. Most people are going to say, "Yeah, sign me up for that," rather than restricting so many different things.
Yeah, I mean, I would think if I went for a fasting that I'm going to probably end up just eating the other 8 hours nonstop.
And that's typically what will happen for a lot of people is that they're so hungry by the time that fast is up, they just want to eat anything and everything, right? And sometimes people will be fasting and they won't lose any weight because ultimately calories are king. So if you're supposed to be eating 2,000 calories a day to lose weight, and during that 8 hours you're eating 3,000 calories because you're so hungry, you're not going to lose any weight. And then you're going to say intermittent fasting doesn't work. Well, it's just about how many calories you ate. That's why it didn't work.
Right. And when you say, you cut out carbs, I mean, for me, is there anything else besides carbs? I mean, I'm a carbaholic for
A
sure.
100%. Yeah, there's no way I'm cutting out carbs.
Okay, so police work takes a big toll on your body. What kind of exercises or habits help officers prevent? And this, I'm asking you for the secret of life. What's going to prevent back injuries, knee injuries, and joint pain? Is there a magic pill for that?
No magic pill, unfortunately, but the biggest bang for your buck is going to be mobility. A lot of times, the shoulder pain, shoulder issues will come from obviously you're wearing a vest, your shoulders are pulled in this position. If you're typing on a computer, things like that, your shoulders are always in this rounded, hunched over position. And then on top of that, when you're off duty, you're on your phone, you're doing the same thing. You're always stuck in this position. So if we can focus on opening up your pecs and stretching your pecs out and strengthening your upper back, like your thoracic spine, that's going to pull your shoulders back and relax, and that's going to eliminate a lot of that shoulder pain and discomfort. Now,
Mm.
from the lower body section, you're always sitting down all day. You're wearing a gum belt. You have weight distributions that are uneven, things like that. So your hips are gonna hurt. It's gonna ruin your mobility when it comes to your hip flexors, sciatic pain, things like that. So if we can mobilize your hips on top of that, then your lower back is going to be a lot better. And if we can strengthen your core and your glutes while improving your mobility, that's again going to improve your overall lower back strength and ultimately reduce any injuries. And of course, there's other exercises that we can do that will directly improve your lower back just strength in general, like deadlifts, kettlebell swings, pull throughs, GHDs, things like that that'll actually improve the strength of those rectors down there to be able to sustain a lot more um, damage, I guess per se, with all the stuff that we wear. And then as far as the knees go, a lot of that is going to come from lack of ankle mobility and lack of quad strength. So if we can strengthen your quad or your VMO is like the little teardrop muscle that's right above your knee. If we can
Mm.
strengthen that muscle, that's going to eliminate some knee pain. And then if when we're wearing boots, our ankle mobility is limited because if we bend over, we try to grab something off the ground or something, we can't use our full ankle flexion because we don't have that. Our boots don't allow us to do that. So a lot of that is going to come from the movement will come from the knee to be able to perform different movements, and that's going to
Hmm.
put a lot more stress on it as well. So if you can maximize your ankle mobility on top of that, you're going to be in a lot better place.
Yeah, for sure. And I've been retired for more than 10 years. I think, one of the greatest helping parts of equipment that they've, really gone wholesale on are the load bearing vests. We didn't really have them at San Francisco PD during my time. Chicago's had them forever. I know a lot of agencies moved to those. They seem to be, better at distributing the weight on an officer. I got to tell you though, again, 10 years retired, and I still feel it in my hips from, carting around that gun belt and the sidearm on my right side. Is there anything we can do to mitigate that, especially if you're a patrol officer for long, several years and you're wearing that gun belt every day?
Yeah, the biggest thing you're going to be able to do is, like I said, is just mobility and strengthening those counter movements, like the glutes and the abs to help with
Mm.
everything with the hips, strengthen up your upper back, your thoracic spine, to hip with the shoulders, and then strengthen up your quads and your calf strength as well for your knees and your ankles as well. So the goal is to a lot of times people will get injuries on duty, but it's based on restrictions that are already happening off of duty. So if you're already tight after that, like if you're tight throughout the day, if you're not doing any type of mobility, if you're sitting down a lot, even outside of your shift, all those will carry over to when you actually go, full duty and you're wearing your entire gear. And then that's when you get injured. Like I've had partners that have blown out their back just by sneezing on duty because they're just so tight and so stiff all the time. It sounds silly, I know, but from people just reaching down and grabbing a pen, they get stuck there and their back is done. It's like, well, it wasn't the pen that did it, dude. It was the fact that you're so tight and wound up all the time. That's why you got injured?
Yeah, totally. We had a guy and everybody made fun of him for, years afterwards, but he was washing his face and he flicked his hair back and his neck froze. And he says, everybody's like, well, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? And he says, I whipped the hair out of my eyes, and we never let him forget
You got to tell them to come up with a better story. That way you can tell other
it.
people.
Exactly. All right. So, Dru, I appreciate your time. 9/11 Strong and creator of the Fit for Duty Academy. How can people find you?
Yeah, definitely. So I do a lot of my content and everything through Instagram. So I know a lot of people say 911 strong. It's actually pronounced 911 strong. So it's NINE, the numbers 11, and then strong. You can reach out to me there. If you reach out to me, send me a message. Policing matters. I'll send you a free resource on exactly like how to train the proper way, how to do proper nutrition. That way you can kind of hit your goals on your own. So.
Nice, nice. Well, I hope you and your family are well. Appreciate everything you're doing for law enforcement officers. Keep them strong, keep them on the job, and you know, to push the mission forward. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate you having me on, man, and allowing me the opportunity to share my knowledge with your audience.
Yeah, for sure. Stay safe, stay in shape, and hope you're well. Thanks for dropping in. Thanks for giving us a look, and hope to talk to you again real soon.